Welcome to Discovery Convos. I'd like to begin with a reflection on the idea that wherever we are meeting on the custodial land of some of the oldest living civilizations in the world. Here in Australia, I want to pay my respects to the people of the Kulin Nation as the traditional custodian owners of the land on which I live and I am meeting you on. I want to pay my respects to their elders past, present and future. At Discovery College, we acknowledge that Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders are the first people of Australia. They have never ceded sovereignty and remain strong in their enduring connection to land and culture. I also just want to say that those words always feel very important to me, but even more so at the moment, acknowledging my privilege in the world and listening to the first people of Australia in their struggles and their experiences and taking on an active role in my ongoing education of how I can contribute better to our Australia. So a little bit about me, I'm Claire. I am white Anglo-Saxon Australian. I use she, her pronouns. I'm a recovering high school teacher, I guess. So my background is education. I have a lived experience of my own mental health challenges, and I've definitely known and cared and supported for others who've had their own. And I work for Discovery College, which is why I'm here. So Discovery College is a mental health education program, and usually we run courses in Melbourne. We can't do that at the moment. So what we're doing is Discovery Convos. We normally run courses for professionals, for young people, for families and friends. And what we think is a little bit different about what we do is that we don't think there's one right way to think about mental health. So we often take a topic and we like to walk around it and look at it from different people's experiences, different professional perspectives, different cultural or spiritual angles, and try and learn something new for our toolkits to manage your own mental health and how we also support others with theirs. So as I said, this is our version at the moment, Discovery Convos, and we're having some awesome chats weekly around the topic of self-care. And so that's why I have Jordan and Deb with me here today. Welcome, Jordan and Deb.
Thank you.
So I guess it might be nice to just start with how are you both? Where are you chatting to us from? And how are you going? Is that a pup in the background?
Yeah, no, I'm so sorry. I'm just going to have to set up.
That's all right. We'll have a dog look. Dog break.
Yeah. It's so hard to keep pets out of the meetings and stuff.
That's it. I think we all kind of enjoy a pet in a meeting though.
That's true, that's true.
But how are you? Where are you meeting us from, Jordan?
I'm here in Headspace Frankston. I'm in a meeting room which usually can probably hold about 40 or 50 people, but there's not much need for that, so I've got it to myself today.
Oh, that's like you're talking to an arena.
Yeah.
And how are you going in general with the world being a bit of a strange place at the moment?
Yeah, I've been going okay with it all. Just I guess in a fortunate position in that I'm able to just sort of keep working and do all of that, and haven't obviously been affected by the virus myself or anything. Mm-hmm. And yeah, just hoping that we can move out of it all quickly and get back to where we were, if not better.
Yeah, exactly. A different space. So what about you, Deb? Pets happy? Where are you meeting us from and how are you going?
I'm going well. I'm meeting from Bentley East, my lounge room.
Thanks for welcoming us in.
With my doggies.
Oh, beautiful.
Who are barking because they haven't had their walk this morning.
Oh, okay. Well, we won't hold you too long. That's important.
They were trying to tell me that it was walk. What was I doing sitting at the table? Could we please go for a walk?
Okay, we'll get through this so you can. So it's always nice to start because I think from these conversations we're learning so much about how self-care can be framed, but also what's the worst self-care tip you've ever been given, is always an interesting thing to learn about people. So what is the worst self-care tip?
Well, I remember one where we talked about being adventurous and getting out there and doing different things. And So my friend and a few of us went skydiving, and we thought that would be adventurous.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, and it was. I forgot to have a little bit of self-awareness around that beforehand, and forgot that I was a little bit scared of heights, and that and yeah. So when I jumped out of the plane, well, I didn't jump out because by the time you get onto the wing, you have to be pushed. So you can't get back in the plane. So I had to get pushed off the plane, off the wing, and then as I came down, I'd forgotten every single thing I'd learned in the training. So I just remember ending up in a field in the middle of nowhere. And I remember as I came down seeing water and thinking we didn't get taught how to do a water landing. And because they said there was no water around here. And obviously when I'd come out, I hadn't turned into the wind. I hadn't watched the wind. So I just drifted kilometers and kilometers away from where I jumped. And then they had to send out a search party to find me. So, and I did fail that jump, but on paper, but actually it was a good jump because I lived.
Did it feel like you were taking care of yourself jumping into that new activity, Deb?
No, the risk taking. I did. I didn't go back for a second jump.
Okay. Just scale those new activities down a bit, maybe.
Right. Risk taking, and a little bit more self-awareness.
Yeah, definitely. I remember when we were talking the other day, you also mentioned about black humour or laughing at the harder things can really help too. Yes,
yeah. Well, of course, I find that so important because I think as you have different crises happen in your life that seeing the funny side of it sometimes, and especially because I facilitate a lot of support groups, and laughter is so important for self-care, and for me it is, and for other people I've met it has been, and sometimes a support group around some really, really traumatic situations can end up quite a funny meeting, and people just having such a good laugh. It's also because they're with people that get what's happening to them, because maybe the same's happening to them.
Yeah.
Similar circumstances.
Yeah. That's lovely. So what about you, Jordan? What's the worst self-care tip you've ever been given?
Well, mine isn't probably directly self-care or wasn't intended to be. But I remember witnessing sort of with a bunch of friends, we were having dinner together, and we had quite a little bit of food left over, and one of my friends, he was getting a bit worried about sort of what he was going to do with it all, and our other friend, I think she was a bit impatient with him at the time. She just kind of turns to him and is like, just whip up a frittata with it all. And I've never forgotten it because it was such a funny thing to say, but it was also so certain that was the logical and best thing that he must do with it all.
So is that part of your friends, like your friend group language now, the whip up a frittata?
That's it, yeah. We're always telling each other now to whip up a frittata. And if one of us seems a bit confused or unsure, what else would we do?
That's great. I think those are both nice in terms of sometimes people throw solutions or ideas into the stressful situations, but we can laugh as well. It can create a bit of lightness to the situation as well, which helps, like self-care.
Yeah, at the time, I think it was such a conversation stopper. Like, it shut my friend down completely and no one knew what to say. And I think that's why it was unhelpful. That's why it didn't do any good.
Okay. And no frittata was made.
I don't know. That's a good question.
Well, I think we've heard like a little bit about you both. So, but maybe if you could share a bit more about your context and like what perspective you're bringing to the chat today.
Yeah, so I'm a clinical psychologist with Headspace Early Psychosis. So I work here with Headspace Frankston in the team here.
Right.
I've been doing this for about 2.5 years now, so getting used to sort of the center and the position and everything. And yeah, always learning a lot about sort of how we can help the people we work with and everything like that.
What about you?
I'm also with the Frankston Early Psychosis team, and I'm the family peer worker.
Yeah. So nice to have two of the team members chatting with. It's awesome.
Yeah.
So I guess then, in thinking about your perspectives, like clinical psychology and from the family peer space, what is unique about that perspective that you bring to the idea of self-care? Unique or different, the way you look at self-care, what it means to you?
I think for me, because I'm coming from a lived experience, that I'm still in the middle of a lived experience. I mean, we are all, I guess, in our own lives, but I've got my self-care is really, really important, so I can balance it with caring for somebody that's not well, and also my work and all parts of my life. So I'm continually always thinking about my self-care, and so when I'm with other families, I really draw on that a lot about even sharing about how I can get a balance in my life and how important the self-care is.
Yeah, but that sounds really wonderful that, obviously you ride the waves, Deb, and then you're also able to continually work on doing it for yourself, but then encouraging it in other families who are riding the waves, which is really helpful.
I think it's just because I'm so self-aware of the importance of self-care that it's always on. It's always very close in my thoughts, actually.
Yeah. What I think it's a really interesting point. What makes you think that self-care is so important from your perspective?
Because the more aware I am of where I am in a certain day or minute, it then allows me to be the best I can be when I'm working with other people.
Yeah.
So that's how I see it as really important.
Don't let the petrol run dry. Make sure you've got enough petrol in the tank for everything.
I can be the best I can be for myself, for my son, for my family, for people I work with, for my team that I work with.
Yeah, you've got a lot of roles there, Deb, which are really important. Yeah. And for you, Jordan, what looks different or unique from your perspective?
I think in psychology, it's interesting with self-care because the self-care is so broad. It captures kind of everything we do in psychology, and it's all about physical and emotional, psychological well-being, relationships, and all of those things, which self-care ties in every way, really.
Yeah.
So it's interesting when we talk about self-care specifically, because it's such a big part of all of the work that I'm doing as a psychologist. And, it's all probably self-care in a way.
Yeah. Actually, when you just explained it like that, I was thinking, I mean, all of those things, do you see them as all together, or do you look at them individually in your work? Do you sometimes think it's good to look at things individually, or? Okay.
Yeah, I guess in terms of sort of the social side of it and the physical side of it, the emotional side of it, it is helpful to separate those things out sometimes, but it's also really helpful to realize how integrated it all is as well. But yeah, I mean, I think the other thing is with self-care, just coming along to appointments, seeing a psychologist itself, that's taking a step with self-care, and that on its own is self-care, amongst all of the things you might talk about and reflect about during the sessions. And then, whether different new approaches or strategies for managing different things determined or come up as a result of that, again, that's self-care. But yeah, it's just so interesting how so much of the process really is self-care.
That's a really wonderful point about help seeking, which can often be the very terrifying jumping point, but that it is self-care. It's like, this is something I need to do to take care of myself. Well, thank you. That's lovely. So then, we always think, do you sit with the language of self-care, both of you? Is it like a phrase you would use with someone, or like personally? Obviously, you have the whip up the frittata language, but is self-care something that's part of your everyday work?
For me, it certainly can be. It's not something I go to a lot just because, like I said, it's so broad and it captures everything we're doing.
Yeah.
But I think that for people I work with, it can be a really helpful way. You know, it's something that a lot of people know what it means and it's talked about a lot. And it can be a helpful way to remind themselves to kind of think about what they're doing and think about how they're looking after themselves.
Yeah.
So in those situations, I'm always really happy to kind of use the terminology and think about self-care. Or if we're having conversations, you know, explicitly about self-care, that can be really helpful as well.
Yeah, it's a term that I do use. Another term I use around self-care is self-compassion, but also balance in life. And I think sometimes I use an example where you've been given 15 eggs and you put 5 in, you're going to spread your eggs into baskets, and the baskets are around family, self-care, and one of the baskets is self-care.
Yeah.
So then it shows people when they put their eggs into the basket. Many of the times there's no eggs, or maybe only one egg that goes into the self-care basket. So yeah. So in that situation, I do use that term.
Yeah.
And that just comes around balance, around in a balanced life.
That's an interesting way to frame it, to say, do you see balance? And I'm sure at difficult times in life, there probably is less balance. So that's really a nice way to reframe that question. Because, it's hard to reflect on how we do that. So I think we might have time to just talk a little bit about, like, you know, can self-care be both good and bad for someone, or who gets to decide what good self-care is or what it looks like, do you think?
I think similar to what Deb was just saying, you know, when I hear that question, I think about balance in particular. You know, I think one particular activity can be both unhelpful and helpful in the right context. So, for example, a classic example of doing some self-care might be physical activity, but there's times when, you know, you might have pushed yourself so hard already and you might need a break. You might be better off treating yourself or talking to a friend.
Yeah.
But then on the other hand, of course, there's times when, you know, we need to look after our physical health and, you know, and maybe do some activity in that way. So that can in some contexts be unhelpful or helpful. It's really complicated, I think, sometimes for people to try to figure it out. And then we've got all different perspectives coming in at us, like we spoke about before, and things in the media and social media are probably giving us ideas about what we are supposed to be doing or should be doing.
Yes.
But I always think with psychology, especially, you know, what we can do there is, before we start to even think about that stuff, is help people and support people to check in with their state at the time and to understand their emotions and be aware of their emotions and their feelings. And from there, you know, to figure out what to do next and what's going to help.
And that probably ties in a lot with the idea of that compassion and balance. Like you said, sometimes we know it's the thing that could be really helpful, but we need to be compassionate if our energy levels aren't up to that thing, or if we're seeing lots of, you know, social media or ideas that are telling us that that's what we need to do, but be compassionate about if we can actually do that at the time. It's a really interesting point.
Yeah, compassion's a really important part of it, and you know, I think again, it's really normal as humans to forget, especially self-compassion is probably the hardest. But I think to really start thinking about self-care, you need to be thinking about the way you're viewing it and the way you're thinking about it. And self-compassion is a really good framework for doing that.
Well, I mean, that's really great to hear. That's probably what really sparked us to do these convos, was that idea of everyone can frame it in the way they want to, and then it becomes, you know, sometimes less of a chore. It becomes something that we embed in our lives. That really does help.
Yeah, and I think just being able to, it's not what somebody else thinks is yourself is important for you. I mean, somebody might say to you, well, you need to do more exercise, but
those conversations always work, don't they?
Yeah. And you know, and it's so important because you know, for that it comes from within, not from really without from outside. So yeah.
Oh, that's really great. Well, thank you both for making some time today. It's been really wonderful. And if, you know, we're doing these weekly on our Instagram and putting them up on our YouTube. So if anyone wants to view some other ones or keep tuning in, you can find us in those spots. But I just want to say a big thank you again, Deb and Jordan, for making space for us and bringing your wonderful expertise.
Oh, thanks, Claire.
Thanks, Claire.
Great to get together.
And I guess we better let you get for that walk for the puppies. We don't want to hold their day up. And I hope the day is kind to you both. So
thank you.